Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football. Guys, of course, it is Sunday night, and there are numerous things that we could talk about tonight, especially with Pitt Football. But also, too, we're going to talk about the crazy carousel of coaching, especially in the college football ranks. Alabama, Washington, now Arizona. I've also got a special guest coming on tonight, a guy that I've been on his show numerous of times. It's about time he's finally on here. That's how much I respect him. So we're excited to have a special guest on tonight to help talk about the national media, the new coaching positions that are now available in college athletics. Does Jim Harbaugh stay at Michigan, or is he headed to the Los Angeles Chargers? I'll give you my thoughts on that. Obviously, too, we will be starting tonight with the notes first. The first official position coach hire has been really put out by the media, not by Pitt yet. Pitt hasn't said anything yet in terms of anything official, but when you have someone comes out from the national media that says, hey, Pitt's hired a guy, it's kind of official, and it comes from Jacob Bronowski, who's from Miami of Ohio, special teams coordinator. He was also a defensive assistant, was actually special teams coordinator, coach of the year, a considered rising star. I'll give you my thoughts on him as well. But more importantly, guys, it's going to be a fun show as we get to talk a little bit about Pitt football, but also national football as we do another Sunday conversation. But before we get into it, give me the countdown. Again, welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen. Guys, I love these Sunday conversations. It's just a weekly thing where I get to interact with you guys because, one, the show is nothing without you. And, I personally, the amount of notes, I mean, heck, I've got plenty here, plenty of notes, everything that goes into this kind of stuff. I do an entire week's worth. I put out some content during the week, especially when from my day job, when I'm not as busy. It was nice to do a couple things this morning. You'll see later on this week. But I really look forward to Sundays because I get to talk to you, but answer questions live. But one of the things that we'll be doing as the year goes on, especially during the off season, is bringing on special guests. And I think that we'll be bringing on people that have a lot of knowledge in terms of coaching, what they're able to bring. The national perspective of college athletics, the ACC, obviously with everything going on with conference realignment. I'm the guy that really talks about the ACC's perspective and about why things are going the way they are, why I think it's in a good position considering what people think, but also, too, bringing other perspectives of what the college football game really looks like. But before we get into it, guys, of course, as I saw Russ mentioned in the comments section, we'll get to it. This show is sponsored by Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. Guys, again, run by two incredible pitmen. If you ever see them in there, they are truly the best. You'll know who they are immediately between Bill and Alan, to two incredible people that I know personally that it's a real privilege to have them as the sponsors of this show. I truly appreciate it. But more importantly, they sell the Fake Slide Pilsner, which also supports the student athletes at the University of Pittsburgh, but also supports Alliance 412, which is a preferred collective of the University of Pittsburgh. Again, guys, Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road, Bethel Park, PA, 15102. The numerous selection, you guys have seen me post the pictures, the selection they have in there between light beers, lagers, anything, especially too, some of the heavier beers, not exactly the type of stuff I go for, but it just shows in general when I bring people through there, especially when we have a get-together, any type of game. Tonight, obviously, the Detroit Lions are actually on tonight. Got it up on the TV here, too. But more importantly, so many different selections. But, of course, the Fake Slide Pilsner, which helps pay the athletes and supports Alliance 412, which is a preferred collective of the University of Pittsburgh. Guys, let's get into some of the comments here before I go into a couple of different comments here. Let's see here. What part of the country is Bonowski going to be responsible for recruiting? We'll get to that. Russ, good evening. Colonial Beer is 25 minutes from Ryan's house. Definitely going next time I am up there. Hail to Pitt. Ryan didn't realize how jacked you are. Yeah, Russ, I'm nowhere near the size that Ryan is. Obviously, the guy's an absolute animal. And between the coaches and everybody else talking about what he looks like and what he's going to be doing this year as one of our starting tackles, it's going to be a hell of a year. So that's awesome. Believe me, I know when I post those pictures, sometimes I kind of hide it for the most part. I try to be pleasant, but then when I do post it, I get those remarks all the time. Glad your son is staying. Hail to Pitt. Yes, of course. Ryan Bayer, I had no doubt about it. Bayer and the entire Bayer family are great Pitt men and women. They are truly a part of the Pitt family. They are truly some of the best people when it comes to players and their families and what they're able to do. So lucky to have a family like that on board with Pitt. JJ, you need to interview Mr. Bayer. Russ, I'll tell you what, man. You know what? Maybe we might need to have you on. You might need to get you on the show here and do a Sunday conversation with a live stream and see how you answer questions, talk a little bit of Pitt football. We'll see what we can do. So are we, Adam? I'm saying he's a Pitt Panther for the duration. They have a great room. That's what I love to hear, Russ. He needs to interview Ryan. No one wants to hear anything I have to say. Hail to Pitt. And I'll tell you what, too. We'll be able to get Ryan Bayer on here as well. We'll be setting something up. Obviously, you guys would love to hear from Ryan, someone who's extremely humble, incredibly intelligent, athletic, a guy that brings a lot of value. So we'll be looking to set something up. I'll reach out to Russ and Ryan and maybe get something set up here. Great to hear he's going to the next Brian O'Neill. Couldn't agree, Adam. I couldn't agree more with you. We'd love to hear a parent's perspective. Lou, it's a very good point. Thanks, Adam. I hope you're right, sir. Hail to Pitt. When do you think the rest of the sentence will be announced? We'll get to that here in a second. University being able to run NIL is going to be a game changer. How do you see that impacting non-revenue sports with Title X, basketball, and football? That'll actually be something for our special guest here tonight, too. We'll be talking about that. Alliance 412. Again, if you are not a subscriber to Alliance 412, please do so. As you've seen now, the positive effects. That's why me personally, I don't work with Alliance 412. I'm not an employee or nothing. But I love to notice and to retweet on Twitter. I did a bunch of stuff here the last 3 days, really recognizing people that are Alliance 412 members. If you are a member, please go to my Twitter. You'll see the tweet about, hey, I'd like to retweet you and just give you appreciation for what you do. If you see that tweet, please quote it. Say what you love about Alliance 412, why you do it, what's your why, what's the anchor about why you want to make an impact on Pitt sports, and then I'll retweet you, and then we'll have a conversation, a dialogue about it. I just love to bring those up and to give you guys as much positivity, but more importantly, the recognition you deserve. Lou, going through the recruiting process definitely changes your eyes on college football. Very good point here by Russ. I can tell you that. It's always good to have a parent's perspective. And I'll tell you what, you go across the board with Pitt football. There are a number of great parents, and honestly, that might be something. Maybe doing like a board with bringing on like maybe 5 or 6 different parents, and then bringing them onto the live stream and get you guys to ask questions to what's it like being a Pitt football dad or Pitt football mom. Maybe like a different type of perspective. That'd be something. Donovan Reed, when are you going to interview Cade Bell? I'll tell you what, I would love to interview Cade Bell. The question comes down to, and I will say this, everything I've heard, and I can tell you from a fact, Cade Bell is incredible. We have hired a rising star, which is number one, but number two, anybody I've talked to, and I've had a little discussion with him a little bit just on Twitter a little bit, he's an incredible person. Anybody I've talked to, especially players from Western Carolina, they love him. And it's so good to have a great guy like that on here. If he has time to be interviewed on here, I will certainly do it. I can tell you this, I will certainly reach out to him. I would imagine we probably wouldn't hear from him on here until he actually speaks to the media before spring practice. I would think that conversation or that interview or meeting the media would probably happen here pretty soon. If he's able to go and to meet before the media, that would be something. But I just think that Pat Narduzzi does a certain Pat Narduzzi does things a certain way that just fit to the program. And I think that it's best that he speaks to the media first, things of that nature, before we really hit, conversations. But Cade Bell or any coach on that Pitt coaching staff, I would love to interview, just because, one, they're great individuals. They're not just coaches, they're people. What they do on a day-to-day basis when it comes to recruiting. I think it would be great for you guys to hear from coaches, just because of just how hard it is, and what they do on a day-to-day basis would be great. And I think I'm going to be actually reaching out to those guys. I will reach out to Cade. I'll reach out to, plenty of those coaches, whether it's Taekwon Underwood, Charlie Partridge, whether they have time. That's the questionable part. I mean, they have a very busy schedule, to say the least. So it certainly wouldn't be hurting my feelings, but I would love to have him on here, because Cade Bell, it's crazy. I'm 29 years old. He's 30, and the same age, almost the same age. And just, it's incredible that he's a Power 5 offensive coordinator. And we really stole him from really the University of Florida. They were really in on him, really wanting to interview him. So that was another big thing. So I would love honestly, Donovan, I would love to get Cade Bell on here. That is a very big goal of mine. We'll see if we can make it happen to fit it into their schedule. And if they, if Pitt allows it, that's kind of the big thing too. Does Pitt allow that to happen? We'll see if it does. Thank you. Yes, everybody hit the like button. If you haven't yet, please, guys, we're almost to 1,000, and that helps the algorithm, spreads the channel. For me, I don't post any of the clickbait stuff. It's always just straightforward. I give you guys straightforward stuff. My opinion, obviously, on a lot of stuff, but just straightforward, honesty stuff. We have we've gone over a number of different things with the media, just looking for that clickbait stuff. Here, you're going to get straight up news, how it is, cut and dry. There is no BS in between. So please, again, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Share this video with people, have them subscribe, like the video. It helps the algorithm. So again, please subscribe to the channel. We are almost to 1,000 because of you guys, because you guys have worked so hard to help promote the channel. And again, I'm so grateful for that. So subscribe, and please hit the like button. I always see the pre-likes before the show starts too, which is incredible. Jim Harbaugh is gone, 44 seniors, and NCAA coming after Michigan recruiting reductions and postseason ban coming. Steven, great comment. I've got a guest coming on at 8:30. We'll be bringing him in. We'll be having these conversations and these questions. So I love these questions, these national questions like Michigan, Alabama. It'll be a number of different things we talk about tonight. But before we get into it, let's see here. There was one question here I wanted to get to. Let's see here. Adam, you actually asked the question, when do you think the rest of the assistants will be announced? The first thing I want to bring up is, obviously, the one that really became public recently was tight end coach and special teams coordinator Jacob Bronowski, who is at the Miami of Ohio University. Tremendous, up and coming coach, a guy that he's been with universities such as Tennessee, UCF, Miami. He has that experience to where he's able to bring his level of expertise, especially for how young he is. But he was also last year, or I should say this year, named Special Teams Coordinator of the Year. That's a huge honor for a guy at his age. Shows you the level of work ethic, obviously recruiting. I think he's done a really good job at that at a number of stops that he's been at. I think that's something that's probably caught Pat Narduzzi's eye, obviously being Special Teams Coordinator of the Year. That's big. Our special teams have been horrible. I think you guys know more than anybody when you look at these things from a top down. Special teams has not been good at all, And again, not to talk so badly about our, Andre Powell or anybody, but a change really needed to be had. And I think when you look at, Jacob coming in, who is clearly the vision for special teams will change completely, which is great. Hopefully less penalties, much more production, especially when you look at the punter position. We'll see what Pitt does at the punter position, what it does going forward. There's potentially some guys they're taking a look at. We'll continue to see and monitor that. Obviously, they've added a long snapper on scholarship. They've also added another long snapper as a walk-on. So there's going to be a competition there. So that's good, too. That was something we really had an issue with going into the season as well last year. We'll be looking at that. That's going to be a huge thing. But when you look at these coaching hires, okay, and obviously I put it as projected as now because none of it's really out there. It's going to happen, but it's not official yet. Jacob Bronowski, obviously the tight end special teams coach, offensive line coach. And why I say this before I get into the name, I posted a video on Twitter about the new head football coach at Alabama, Kalen DeBoer, talked about how when he gets his coordinators, create guys that the coordinator wants, because you want to be able to functionally have your offense in place and guys who you feel comfortable with. That's what leads me to see that the offensive line coach hired Jeremy DeVoe, who was the offensive line coach at Western Carolina. He has actually developed 10 NFL offensive linemen in his career. Some of the notable places that he's actually been at, one of them is the University of Kentucky. Kentucky, obviously not known as a football school, but they've had recent success here in the past couple of years. Even before that, he had a number of different people go through there, multiple different offensive linemen. I saw 10, especially too when you look up his career. I'll make sure I get you guys those names of the 10 NFL offensive linemen. They're there. But when you overall look at it too, he's had some guys in the FCS and in the Group of 5 level too go from Group of 5 FCS level to the NFL. Right off the bat, anybody that I've talked to has said that his development is incredible. People have really marked him. When you look at assistant coaches, position coaches, their wide receiver coach is really good, but when it comes to knowledge and development, Jeremy was actually looked at as one of their best assistants. We took really one of their best assistants from there. That's a huge factor. And you look at our offensive line play from the past couple of years. I love Dave Borbley. I just think sometimes the game passes some of us by. And, he's a tremendous coach. He's a veteran, a guy who has done an incredible job anywhere he's been. I think, just at his age, I think he's kind of reached that point. But this will be a new challenge for, like we talked about the Ryan Bayers, Branson Taylor, Terrence Moore, Ryan Jacoby. Obviously, we have some new commits coming in, especially from NC State, what they'll look like, but we're also looking to develop younger guys as well. I do expect Pitt to add one more offensive lineman to create more depth, more competition. I think a competition brings out the best in everybody. And I like what Pitt's done. They've looked at a number of different positions, whether it's the defensive line room, defensive line, linebacker, defensive backs, quarterback, running back, offensive line, tight end. They've looked at these rooms and said, okay, what do we need to do to create some competition, but also upgrade the room? I think Pitt's offensive line, for example, has a lot of talent. I just think it needs more depth. So they're adding a couple of extra pieces. They're also being able to develop the guys who are really that 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th man. You look at guys like Terrence Enos. He's a guy that's going to be really good down the road and continues to it's crazy. He pops in and does a great job against, Notre Dame. The game didn't end up well, but he did a good job against Notre Dame. You look at, guys like Isaiah Montgomery. He's back there as well. Ryan Coretta, another young guy that's back there. It's a young group right now, but you wanted to add in a couple pieces where you have, okay, hey, here's a couple pieces with a little bit of experience. It does help. So I think Jeremy's going to be huge with that. And the fact that Cade Bell likes him that much. And one of the things I've heard so much since he's been hired is Cade Bell loves to recruit. We talked about Mark Whipple. He did a good job here in his third year. The first 2 years, he almost got fired after his second year because they were 2 bad years. They were really not producing. And Pat Narduzzi made a good decision, looked at the pros and cons, got him to come back, brought him back. Kenny Pickett comes back. You win an ACC championship in 2021. In this aspect here, you're looking at a guy like Jeremy who's been around the block. Again, Kentucky, he's been in the Power 5. He's now been in the FCS level. He's a guy that produces talent. 10 offensive linemen from whether it's the Power 5, FCS, to the NFL. So to me, that's a good hire. And he's done a good job. The recruiting, we'll continue to see what that looks like. When you got guys like Cade Bell on staff, where usually in the past, our coordinators have really not recruited. Cade Bell is a major recruiter. Raphael Williams, he's come in. He's helped recruit him. He's helped recruit other players, especially to the portal, especially whether it's offensive linemen, running backs, whether it's Desmond Reed. I think he's going to be really good this year. We look at offensive production when he was at the Western Carolina. Incredible job that he was able to do there. So I like the hire. I really do. And I think it brings more youth, more energy, but more drive. You want coaches that want it more and more each year. That's one of the things I always loved about Kirby Smart. I posted a thing on Twitter the other day talking about how, hey, I want this stuff, but you got to want this shit too. You got to want to be successful. You got to want to jump. You got to want to get after this. A lot of these guys are younger guys. So it's good. You want that energy coming back. And finally, the new running back coach, Lindsey Lamar. He's currently right now the offensive coordinator and wide receiver coach at Howard University. Okay. He was actually recently this past year at the Steelers facility, but also too up in Latrobe with the Steelers fellowship program, which is huge. So if you're part of the fellowship program with the Steelers or in general, the National Football League, you're considered a rising star. It's a very good group to be a part of. Great to have on your resume as well. He's a guy that's produced at a very high level. If you remember him in the old Big East days, he was a hell of a running back at USF, man. I mean, if you remember, for me, being 29 right now, when I was a young kid, I watched him when he came up to Heinz Field when he faced Pitt in the old Big East days, which was real tough football, running football. So that's huge as well. And he's been well known in the DC area, Virginia. That's where he's going to be at. That's where a lot of his connections are. So I'm really happy about that. Overall, you look at the coaching staff really starting to come about. Looks good. But there's only been one really that has come out nationally, and that's Jacob Bronowski from Miami of Ohio. I expect the other ones to really be presented hopefully within the week or so, whether it's the end of this week or going into next week, because obviously spring ball will start towards the end of February, and we'll continue to see what the team looks like. But I would think that you get those hires in pretty soon so you can have those press conferences, do what you need to do to get those in, but more importantly, to be able to have them on board to where they get to meet the players, transfer players, be able to talk to the media, coaches talk to the media. That's exactly what you want. All right, let's see here. One more here. There's another question in here that I loved. Let's see here. Universities being able to run, again, this is a great question, Will. Universities being able to run NIL is going to be a game changer. How do you see that impacting non-revenue sports with Title IX in basketball and football? Well, let me tell you. Today, we're going to bring on a special guest, and he's actually backstage right now. This is a dear friend of mine, a guy who, when you look at knowledge, is top shelf in what he does. I've been on his show numerous times because of the level of respect that I have for him, but also, too, he covers the Oklahoma Sooners. He has covered the Big 12, now obviously going to the SEC, has a lot of knowledge about the SEC, but in general, college football knowledge. He does an incredible job, and he's here with us tonight. And this is a question I'd like to bring him on for, but also, too, a couple other questions about Jim Harbaugh, where we could potentially see that going. And that's Jason Watkins of the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. Jason, what's up, brother?
JJ, my boy. What's up, my man? What's up,
brother?
Good to see you, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks
for those kind words as always, man. He's always too kind to me, folks. Too kind to him. Make sure you are kind to him and hit that like button. Subscribe. You got him almost there. Come on.
Dude, we're almost to 1,000, and I can tell you this, man. It's what I say is the truth, brother. It's it's like 7-Eleven. I'm always open, and it's always you always know what you're going to get. So, brother, it's always good to get you on here. It's always a privilege to get your take on a lot of things, and that's why, dude. The questions about just college football in general. Okay, when you look at this kind of stuff, I thought this was a great question from Will. We've talked about this before on your on your channel, which has been a numerous conversation. Universities being able to run NIL is going to be a game changer. How do you see that impacting non-revenue sports with Title IX, basketball and football? In your opinion, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what level we're talking about, I guess, really. If you're talking about the big conferences, the power conferences are going to continue to be able to afford to do what they're doing, right? I think that when you start looking at the ACC with some of the programs and even some of the Big Ten programs, like, that are coming in, the new guys coming in from the West Coast, it's going to dip into that a little bit because of all this travel. I think that is very underrated in all of this, not just competitively, but also, it's a lot more. You got a lot more games in, every other sport but football. Basketball and softball and baseball and all that other stuff. I mean, they're playing, in baseball and softball, what are they playing? 50, 60, 70 games, whatever it is. For, that's a lot of travel, man. So you got to look at it in terms of that. But I think that when it comes to the SEC, the Big Ten, they're making the big money. These playoff revenue is going to continue to rise. So, as long as you have a place at the table in the playoffs, I think that you should be able to theoretically hold on. You know what I mean? But I do think that, I mean, that's the whole deal. The reason I believe that you're going to have to see some changes to the NIL structure, because NIL is not the same thing as revenue share. And I think that a lot of people forget about that and think that, you know, we should be able to hold on to these kids and that, you know, they're not holding up to their contract. It's not a contract with the school, not technically anyway. So we got to keep that in mind. But I mean, honestly, I think, it is a great question. Well, I think it's going to be able to, when you've got a program like Pitt, you know, you guys are doing unbelievable things with your NIL collective, right? You talk about it all the time, JJ, and I love it. It's you're seeing these things that I think it's kind of giving a new lease on life for programs that weren't necessarily contenders in the past. I don't believe that it's making everybody a contender, but I think that if you really care about it and you have people that get behind it and really want to win, and you have your donors and everything else, you can get there, right? You're going to be able to get there. So at least to get competitive and stay, stay within, the power structure or whatever it is, if they go to whether they go to a subdivision or whatever ends up happening, which who's to say?
Yeah. And I think that's becoming a more and more conversation of the Power Five, or I guess technically the Power Four, breaking off from the NCAA. And again, it was one of the great topics that we talked about on your show. We look at the Big Ten overall right now in terms of, Will, and to your point, the NIL, I think it'd be great to be run by the universities and you have a collective there and you're able to bring everything into one space. You're able to really monitor what goes on. I think is a major factor, could really help. But in terms of basketball, you look at basketball and football, those are really two of the only sports that will really see the NIL factor of it. Right. But you look at the Big Ten, okay, that's now becoming a national conference. But we talked about the level of travel, okay, and you talk about baseball playing 60 games, soccer, you have wrestling, women's basketball, anything. I mean, all these different sports, the travel is ridiculous. And the only one...
Even football, man, it's going to be tough for Oregon to go to freaking... New Jersey to play freaking Rutgers.
Exactly. So you're going from Washington to Rutgers, from Washington to New Jersey. You're getting USC to East Lansing. You're getting, UCLA to Happy Valley. I mean, you're doing all kinds of stuff. And I think that's why it kind of brought Kalen DeBoer probably to that point where, I have a real opportunity to leave Washington to go to a better spot, which is rare because Washington's a really good school. I think with the resources that they have, he's been able to do successful things where, he hasn't always had the most talented roster, and what he was able to do this past year kind of goes to show who, what kind of coach he is, everything involved with that. But it's funny though, when you look at in general, one of the questions I actually thought about recently, before we get into that though, NIL isn't structured. That's the biggest problem. Russ, I couldn't agree with you more. There's a question about that and with contracts, and obviously Jason brought that up. It's almost like free agency every year. It's like, is it a 2-year deal? Is it a 3-year deal? Is it a 1-year deal? What's your thought on that, Jason?
My thought on it is that we need to, as I said a minute ago, is realize that it's not the same thing as a contract with the school. I know you have boosters that are connected to the school that are running these collectives. JJ, you're a part of the one collective, right?
Yeah.
And I understand that, but what people seem to forget is that these contracts that you may be doing with a player as a collective or whatever the case may be, it's not a contract to play football. It's a contract to be an influencer, to, an endorser of products, right? Yep. So, you're going to help. These boosters are trying to up their revenue. So they're using these influencers, players from the team. I mean, obviously they would not be influencers if they didn't play for your football team. But it's not the same thing, guys. If you really want this to slow down as far as running off in the portal and things like that, you have to actually get into what is essentially revenue share and all this other stuff. And if you're noticing, the NCAA is dumping tons of money to keep that from happening. They do not want to share money with these players. The other thing that I would remind everybody is, this is something I've been saying a lot lately, the players are not one player has bargained or made a single rule that they go by. Not a single rule. It has not come from the players. So whatever beef we have with the system, blame it on the adults in the room.
Exactly. And it kind of leads me into actually another question here for Jason Adam. I thought this was a great question. Since you're an Oklahoma fan, how do you feel like they will fit in with the SEC? Do you think that they will be consistent contenders?
Yeah, I do. I think it's first season in, a little bit of a young team. You got a brand new quarterback. You know, he's a 5-star quarterback, and he looked really good at times in the Alamo Bowl. At times, he had too many turnovers for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You saw some things with him that you were never going to see from Dylan Gabriel, even though I love Dylan Gabriel as a quarterback.
Yeah.
What I would say is that is the toughest league in the country, and there's going to be an adjustment. And they have probably one of the, well, it's not the toughest schedule, it's probably second or third toughest schedule of all going into it. First year, I think that anywhere, I believe that if everything falls right, they could win 10 games. If they don't, I think 8 wins is a good, successful first year in the SEC. And yes, I think that they will continue. Look, Oklahoma is a blue blood program that expects to perform, period, no matter who they're playing. It doesn't matter. I believe in Brent Venables. If you look at what he's done in recruiting, the way that he's built the culture in the locker room, they went from 6-7 to 10-3 in 1 year, beat Texas. You know, everybody's in love with Texas, but they beat Texas. So I believe that it's going to be, I think there is more parity. I think that that's right. But I do believe that Oklahoma is never, ever, ever going to settle for being mid-tier in any conference anytime. If Coach Venables is unable to put it all together as a head coach, they'll find somebody that can. You know, that's just that's the long and short of it. They have made a decision to really go all in with their NIL stuff as well. A lot of this stuff, there's a lot of things that needed to change around Norman for sure. Lincoln Riley is a farce. The dude was a joke. You Pitt fans know.
Believe me, we know a lot about Lincoln Riley and USC. Jordan, believe me, we know plenty enough.
Portal, great at tampering, great, and he can draw up offenses that will kick you in the teeth year after year. What he doesn't do is build in the trenches, and this is something that really had to happen at Oklahoma. I think that they're probably a year away from really contending for all of it. 2025, I think that they're contending for a national championship. If everything falls right, they could win 10-2. But just to answer the question simply, they're going to be contenders in it. But make no mistake, right now with Alabama, kind of hemorrhaging players. I think they've got 29 guys that are either going to the draft or in the portal already. Georgia smells blood in the water. They're getting their coaches. They're getting anything they can to just gobble up that, take on that program as their own, or the remnants of that program as their own, and make it tough on Kalen DeBoer.
And it brings me to my next question. And it's funny, W Pitt, with Saban retiring, does that open up the SEC? One of the things that I actually kind of thought about, and I saw Reggie Bush posted on Instagram to a video of Nick Saban being interviewed by ESPN. He said, look, I wasn't sure if I had the drive to wake up every morning and to do the same exact stuff and be productive and go work till 2 a.m. and get up at 6 and do it over again. But Reggie Bush had a comment and said, well, I don't think it is that. I think it's the NIL that really has opened up everything, and that he can't control NIL like it was before. And you're starting to see more of the parity start to come around to where, hey, he's not dominating the SEC like he was before. And there's those questions are really coming up. What are your thoughts on that, Jason?
What was that? I missed the last top part of that. Did I lose you?
No, there you are. Okay. No, just it's crazy when you look at the SEC in general. Reggie Bush had a comment like, hey, what are your thoughts? Because he thinks it's the reason that Saban's retiring is because NIL pushed him out. He doesn't like NIL. He can't control it fully like he was before, where he kept it in tight. Alabama was dominating. It's kind of a question moving forward. So what did you think? Do you think he retired because of his age, or just NIL?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I think we've noticed over the last couple of years that he's been cranky about it. He lost his He lost his advantage, JJ. I mean, look, let's not sit here and act like nobody was paying players to begin with in the years past, because we know hell, it was going on in Oklahoma. It's gone on everywhere, guys. Plain and simple. But he can't just I think Hank has a great. You can't just stuff a bunch of 4s and 5s on the bench anymore because of that as well. Saban was always that guy that, he might grant you a transfer, but even in the years that you were going to have to wait a year, he was never going to let you go to another SEC school. In fact, he was the one that drove that rule that they had in the SEC, that you couldn't go to another SEC school from an SEC school. So, which, I've always thought was kind of crazy. But he's systematically, I guess, lost grip on everything that kind of benefited what he was doing. And once you get a foothold in somewhere like that, and it's easy that you can sit there and stack 4s and 5s just waiting for their turn to come out, because they're not going to leave. If they're going to the NFL, they're not going to leave. Nowadays, though, with the money being what it is, and now there's no stopping transfers at all. Anybody can transfer year to year and that's being held up by the courts. You're seeing this move in that direction. And the only way you're going to do it is to actually have an employee relationship with players, to where you have an actual contract that says you got to stay here minimum of 2 years, or maybe it's a 1-year deal or whatever. But it's a real contract with the school that you have to pay. I think that I think you've noticed it over the last couple of years, right? That he's just a little cranky about it. He doesn't like it. It's taken away his advantage of, hey man, we don't get caught. We don't get caught.
Yeah. And I think it's starting to catch up, and it's kind of funny now. I think it's NIL, but it's also the transfer portal. He can't get guys to stay there the entire time. Again, we see today. Correct. Saban retires 2 days ago, and Isaiah Bond already goes into the portal. He's going to Texas now. That was a huge decision. I retweeted a photo. Isaiah Bond said it was a business decision about why he went to Texas, and he was sitting in a Lamborghini in Austin, Texas today. So there's so much stuff going on behind the scenes, and what NIL looks like. And just for me, I think it is a little bit of both. I think he got tired a little bit, but he can't control the narrative. He can't get guys to stay on the team for at least 3 or 4 years. And it kind of brought up a comment here from Adam. For us, Robert Foster came from the Pittsburgh area, went to Alabama, was there for really 5 years, won a couple national titles. If he didn't get hurt, he probably starts a little bit more. But at the end of the day, he's a guy that's down there, came in last second, thought for sure he was going to Pitt, ends up going to Alabama based off of a last-minute deal, which was crazy to think about in itself. When you look at it overall, you look at the aspect just in general, NIL, the transfer portal, I think it's just in general, it really wore Saban down. And I think that's really what led to Kalen DeBoer getting that job at Alabama, which was crazy. I saw a bunch of their student section accounts on Twitter say, well, we'll give them 3 games. The expectations at Alabama are just ridiculous. And again, you look for the greatest head football coaches because of who can handle the amount of stress. And Nick Saban did it for 17 years. I mean, he's the greatest football coach, in my opinion, of all time, especially in college football.
No doubt.
But it leads us to another one, which, again, it was a great question up here. And it brings me to, let's see if I can find it here. Steven had a great question. Jim Harbaugh is gone. 44 seniors. The NCAA coming after Michigan. Recruiting reductions and postseason ban coming. I don't know about the postseason ban. I think that's going to be a little bit too much. But in my opinion, I think Jim Harbaugh's gone too. And I think with McCarthy not coming back, and he still had another year left, and I think he should have come back. The quarterback for Michigan, the fact that he left already, and he still had a year left, tells me that Jim Harbaugh is going to the NFL. And I wouldn't be shocked to see them try to team up, especially if he was a backup in the NFL. Obviously, the Los Angeles Chargers have Justin Herbert. Of way of Oregon when he left Oregon a couple of years ago through the draft.
And I saw that they interviewed him already, or they've already talked to him. So I think Harbaugh's in the mix there. I think he's in the mix in Vegas too. So
yeah, I think he probably will be in the mix in Vegas. I think they'll still go with Antonio Pierce, but also
they should go with Antonio Pierce.
He's done a hell of a job, and also too, I don't think Jim Harbaugh could put up with with Al Davis as the owner out there. There's too much involvement. It's almost like Jerry World. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's not the same as Al Davis when he was there. His son's a lot different. He doesn't claim to know as much about football as Al did. You know what I mean? I don't know that that's really a big headache. And I think that they kind of had a good relationship, Harbaugh and them. Even with his dad. Man, I don't know. You got a brand new stadium. You've got, a fan base that adores the Raiders no matter what.
Yeah.
And it just kind of seems like he's that guy that would love to be the Raiders coach because he likes to rub people the wrong way anyway. You don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So
it brings up a great point. And also, too, Jim Harbaugh to Dallas after today. I mean, I'll tell you what, McCarthy, man, there's no way he survives after today. Oh, my God.
He's been terrible. He's been terrible in wasting good quarterbacks forever. This guy.
Unreal.
I
mean, Dak Prescott, in the middle of the third quarter, he only had 123 passing yards. They weren't able to move the football. I think Warren Sharp on Twitter was talking about it. He had 4 consecutive drives, it was second and long, and they called for a halfback dive or a power on second down. I mean, just talking about being just so predictable, but it just comes back to the Dallas Cowboys.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it goes back to the Dallas Cowboys being the Dallas Cowboys, just blowing it at the end of the year.
Well, and I even, talking about McCarthy, I go back to when they were in the NFC Championship game. It's been a lot of years ago with Green Bay, whenever they had, 3 4th and goals on the Seattle 1-yard line. And he kicks 3 field goals. He doesn't go for a freaking touchdown one, and they got a lead, but they didn't hold it. You know what I mean? It's just that kind of deal that you just see that over and over and over again. And yeah, I could see Lincoln ending up in Dallas just because of the fact that it'd be just exactly what he wouldn't care about having control. He doesn't, I think that's the hard thing about getting somebody to Dallas. Harbaugh to Dallas, I don't think so, because he's gonna piss Jerry off. Jerry needs to feel like he has control at all times. That's the real problem there. He brought in. He could have gotten. There's a lot of guys that would have taken that job if he's not in the way all the time. But he gets a guy like McCarthy because McCarthy didn't care, and just like Jason Garrett didn't care about who was in charge of whatever. Jerry's got to be front and center all the time.
Yeah, and that's kind of noticeable with him. But when you look at coaching hires, obviously, Jim Harbaugh will probably go to the NFL from anything that I've heard is more than likely. But you look at today, Washington does make a hire. Arizona head football coach Fish ends up going to Washington. A crazy tweet from I can't remember if it was Pete Thamel or somebody. I think it was Pete Thamel said that Arizona had the option to give a new contract, and in quotes, he said Arizona said that was not on their to-do list. I think when you put out a comment and a statement like that, and you're going to now the Big 12.
Oh, they've been shitty forever.
Oh, man. And you finally have a good year. And, in a way, I think that actually hurts the Big 12 now, because if they're not focused on football, you thought, hey, it's a good football team. They're coming back. It'll be a great addition.
Plus, they got the basketball program. That's a good deal.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, they're back to good old Arizona. Watch, they will lose their freshman phenom quarterback and their receiver tandem at minimum to Washington. Plus they're just, I can't even believe it. Yeah, Jed Fish has been one of those guys that I've been saying it all year. I was surprised that he hadn't already been in the mix for some of these other jobs.
Yeah.
That were already popped up, before the end of the season. It kind of surprised me.
When you look at Arizona, obviously, just Kevin Sumlin, Rich Rodriguez before him. Just 2 horrible hires. That program was in an absolute wreck. And Fish comes in and just absolutely turns it around quickly. I think Washington gets a good deal there. But now Arizona's opened up. Now they have a transfer portal. It's open for 30 days. Washington has a transfer portal open for 30 days. Alabama has one open for 30 days.
Yep.
And potentially now Michigan potentially having a 30-day window for players to leave. The college football world right now is just crazy to think about. And the coaching hires
is shifting. Hey, look, the college football as we know it is over. We've never seen what we're about to see.
Mm-hmm.
Never. It's never been like this. It'll never be the same again. Get ready, folks. Buckle up. This is about to be an entirely different world that we live in. And it's, look, I was just thinking about it earlier. I'm recording one right now on kind of the state of the program at Oklahoma. But, you know, so much has changed in a freaking week.
Yeah.
It hadn't even been a full week since the CFP championship game.
Yeah.
Saban's retired. They've already replaced him. There's all these guys in the portal now. You've got Jed Fish gone to replace him there. The dominoes are falling. And then look at what they're doing at Georgia. The shit is getting real. This is nothing. Wait until what we see over the next couple of years. I want to ask you a question whenever you get off to because this is kind of going to all these changes. What do you think about this 6-6 CFP model? Because I don't think people really realize what we're about to see in this playoff. You're expecting that it's going to fix everything for the folks that didn't make it in. I don't know that it's going to, because the way that the model was going to work before, it was assuming there were 5 power conferences, not 4.
Well, I think what's going to happen now is it's going to help the field basically at this point. So what they're going to do is go to a Power 4. There'll be a conversation probably coming up here pretty soon saying it's no longer the Power 5. It'll be the Power 4 conference champions, the one group of 5. Does it fix all the problems with more teams?
So they're going to go 5-7 instead of 6-6 then? Because it would have been 6 automatics by conference champions, which means you would have had 2 group of 5 automatic qualifiers. That is trouble, if you ask me.
Yeah. For me, that's, I understand one group of 5 getting in because you're helping that. I understand it. Getting one team in is going to be great.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Now, does it add more viewership because when you're adding more fans involved? I understand the money aspect of it. It's all driven by money. I get it. But I think it's definitely going to go from that 6-6 model to that 5-7 model where you have the Power 4, one group of 5, and then 7 at large bids, and really just the way that they're all ranked, which, for me, you're adding another at large bid, I'm fine with that. If anything, you take one out, obviously the Pac-12 falling apart. At the end of the day, this larger college football playoff is going to be so much flush money. I mean, the amount of money they're going to make from this playoff, because you're going to have so many different fan bases where now the conference championships mean something now. So now if you win your conference championship, you're in the playoff. So if you're looking at teams, whether you're in the ACC or the Big 12, I mean, you're looking at that. I mean, you win your conference, you're in. Okay, same thing with the SEC and the Big 10. But when you look at the at-large bids, let's say you have a harder strength of schedule, that schedule will still help you out with the at-large bids. So overall, the money that's going to be flowing through this is going to be incredible. I mean, because you have so many people involved. So now the more people, you've added more eyeballs, more people watching the college football games, the craziness will continue. And it's almost like, you'll never get to the realm of what a March Madness is, but you're adding in teams that potentially didn't have a shot before. And even though those games early on, I think what the greatest thing too is there's going to be home games. Your first round are going to have home games. Can you imagine a home game?
I think the early part is going to be pretty cool. What I warn against is people thinking that this means that it's not going to be, that it's going to be more competitive, and you're going to fall back to like the NFL that is a parity league. They want it to be a parity league. This is not what they want in college football. And I don't know how long the Big 10 or the SEC are going to deal with not having 3 or 4 teams in every year instead, because, and if you think about it, I mean, I've been kind of trying to work this out in my mind. And Josh Pate had said something about this in the last few days or whatever, but he was talking about, look, it's one thing to have a group of 5 team in there.
Yeah.
But if you think about what the CFP was with the 4 teams, there was no automatic qualifiers. Because clearly that's what kind of ran into the issue this year with Florida State being undefeated and being left out, right? Yeah. But it was always probably going to fall to that. I'm surprised it didn't happen more often, because you ended up with, you had 5 power conferences in 4 spots.
Yeah.
So, that's why they didn't have, I don't love the idea of automatic qualifiers for this thing, just because of the fact of, if we know who the best 12 teams are. If you really want the best 12, put the best 12 in. If you really want to crown the deserving champion, you need to do that. That being said, I'm not saying that I don't want to see more inclusion, but if you think, I mean, I kind of feel like having that group of 5 school, or even 2, if it was to stay at 6 and 6, which I don't know that it is or isn't, you know, I know they're talking about it.
Yeah, there's no way it will.
It would be crazy to, right?
Yeah.
But even at the 1, where was Liberty ranked this year? Right? I mean,
I think the highest they got was what?
At the end. Like 25th or something. It was right at the back of the top 25, right? And they were undefeated, right? And I'm not even bad-mouthing Liberty so much, but I'm saying then they get into the Cotton Bowl, or I mean it was the Cotton Bowl, and got drugged like you would have expected them to. You're going to tell me that they would have been better because had the ACC not voted it down earlier when Oklahoma and Texas and all that stuff that was going on, when the ACC didn't want to do it this year, and it would have been this year, so that would have left Oklahoma out at number 12 because of the fact they got left out of the New Year's Six even, and in favor of in favor of Liberty playing Oregon. Oklahoma, Oregon maybe is a little better game. But you're going to end up seeing that. You mean to tell me that if you're a top 12 team, that you're still going to be okay with that? I think that you're going to run into a lot of the same problems. And the truth of the matter is Liberty going to go through and win even one game? You'd be surprised, right? If they get to host a game or whatever, okay, fine. But I think that it just got harder to win national championships, JJ. You got to get through more.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. You have to get through more. And again, it's just money driven. I mean, it just at the end of the day, it's this stuff is never going to make sense, And I understand because I had some Tulane people getting after me a little bit. Yeah, Tulane beat USC a couple years ago, obviously, which was a great win for Tulane, and what they were able to do. And he's now, I think he's actually Willie Fritz is at Houston now, if I'm not mistaken. I think he got hired at Houston.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But I think that this is going to be a great hire. But I think for these next 2 years, or potentially 1 year, I think we're potentially going to see, and I think it'll probably be 2, you'll see the power, the group of 5 get in. But when this breaks off, let's say it breaks off in 2 or 3 years, I don't think the group of 5 gets a shot anymore. I think it's going to be your power 4, which, and when you look at it, look at this year. Alabama gets in as a conference champion over Georgia. I don't know how I felt about that because I think Georgia losing one game in 3 years.
I agree. I mean, you first lost in freaking 30 games and you leave them out. I think that as egregious as people want to act like Florida State was, which I've got my opinions on that, but as egregious as that was, I think it's egregious that the back-to-back champions that lost in their championship game only and beat everybody else that they played in the toughest conference in the country were left out.
Yeah.
It would have been great to have a bit, but the question I was asking you earlier is there's no guarantees if you had a 12-team playoff this year that it would have fixed all these problems, JJ.
I agree. The one thing I will say is that obviously the 12-team playoff, you've got, okay, so let's say
you get both of them in probably, but
you get both of them in there because they're both going to get in. You'll have Alabama and Georgia get in, but look where they're ranked to begin with. They were both in the top 10 anyway, so they are both going to get in regardless. If you win your conference and you win your conference championship, let's be honest, you're probably somewhere between. You're probably going to be in the top 12 because to win any of those conferences, you're gonna have one, maybe at most 2 losses. So the conference championship for a Power 5.
That's what we know from. In the past. I don't know that that's the same now. Look at the Big 12. How it might be real parity in that league because I don't think that there's anybody that stands out that you're like, oh yeah, they're going to win it all the time.
Oh yeah, because they don't have any big brands.
I love Coach Witt, and I think I know that I'm kind of in the minority a lot with this, but I think Coach Prime is going to get it right there in Colorado. But look, you got to look at Lance Leipold at Kansas. You've got to look at Chris Kleiman at Kansas State. These are good programs. TCU and Sonny Dykes. These guys are going to run their programs well. Year after year after year after year. And as much as I hate to say it, even Oklahoma State, they're going to have their years that they're going to be up there, right? They're going to gag it away in the championship game, but they'll be there, right? So you don't have anybody, and you could end up with the conference championship a lot of times, I think, with 2 or 3 losses, and the backup and the runner-up's probably going to have 3 or 4 losses. How's that going to fit for them getting into the playoff? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think for me, I think and I've said this before, and I know there's going to be people that don't want to hear it, but the Big 12 is at a disadvantage because one, there are no major teams in that conference anymore. You know what I mean? Oklahoma ran that conference for years because there was one team that was just running through it. I think, when you look at obviously the SEC, you'll have a number of different teams, whether it's, Georgia, we'll see what Alabama looks like going forward. Georgia they'll be running that conference again, but now you have Texas and Oklahoma in there. We'll see what they look like next year. Tennessee, they had a good 1 year and then they fell off the face of the earth again. We'll see what that looks like. Obviously, the Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan, Ohio State. We'll see what Michigan looks like now without Jim Harbaugh. Washington coming on board with a new coach. We'll see what that looks like. Does Fish, create magic out there again? How much does travel
hurt
involved?
The Big 12 right there, though, man. Right, especially in the immediate, right? Jed Fish leaving Arizona. I thought they were a contender right away.
Yeah, brother. I mean, at the end of the day, if I had to pick a school every year to show up and potentially win it every year and just dominate the Big 12, it would have to be Utah. I mean, I would say Utah just because of coaching. But when you look at it, I do see a lot of parity. But at the same time, you look at some of those teams in there, there's a lot of questions there. No doubt in my mind. But when you look at, the ACC, you obviously, Florida State for how long they're going to be in for it. We'll see what that looks like. Clemson, they're running it. Clemson will still be up there even with Dabo pushing buttons on what to call and what their offenses look like. Those 2 teams will be up there. We'll continue to see what it looks like with other teams in the ACC. But I think that, the Big Ten's going to have to prove, is it just Ohio State and Michigan and then Penn State? Penn State's in the mix, and then when they face Michigan and Ohio State, they can't figure it out. Does USC figure it out? But I highly doubt it. I think travel's going to kill that program again. They were 7-5 in the Pac-12. Now you're going to go all the way across the country.
Bro, they're soft.
So when you look at it overall, I don't think USC. I don't think they're going to be the program they were ever anymore. And I'm not to say that
not until they get rid of Lincoln Riley. They got to get somebody else in there.
Yeah. And I think that's going to happen a lot quicker than what people think because it's going to fall apart.
I think he's got this year, maybe next year at the most.
Yeah, I mean, at most that's what he has. I mean, I would be shocked.
4 years. They'll give him 4 years if it looks, unless he was to just completely tank this year, which could happen. I just don't see it. I think the Oregon is I don't think they're necessarily a sleeper. I think they're a contender. What I will say is that Dan Lanning needs to actually win big games, right?
Yes.
He needs to win one. He hasn't yet. So, I mean, he lost to Oregon State the first time around. He got them this year, but then, he's lost to what? He lost every game to Washington. Yeah. And they did not recruit on the same level. So I wasn't surprised I'll tell you, I don't think that Alabama offered him at all. I don't. I think that was Jimmy Sexton working his magic to get everybody money. But
I mean, he's certainly worked magic for everybody. I mean, everybody got their money.
Absolutely.
And,
Jimmy's the man.
And I mean, don't get me wrong. I told you behind the scenes that Norvell was going to Alabama, which Florida State stepped up.
I think that was the one that they probably wanted over DeBoer.
Yeah,
but I think they did better getting DeBoer.
But let's be frank. Why the hell would you want Mike Norvell based off of one season? What were they thinking? Like I was shocked by that. I understand he's built that program up to where it's where Florida State where they're at now, but that's the same school trying to figure out a way to get the ACC, spending millions of dollars in legal fees, which I've told people about, which is going to be really bad for them. But also too now you're paying that guy no longer $7 million. You're paying him now $10.5 million a year with his new contract, plus incentives, plus all this money for recruiting.
And do you believe in this whole that their culture is so great, like TJ Pittenger said? And I love TJ, don't get me wrong, man, but I've gotten so over the freaking Florida State group.
Brother, I can tell you this. I am by no means am I a Florida State guy. No, by no means. And again, I was very defensive of them.
I understand why they're upset, JJ. I'm saying at this point, at some point, you got to show me that, look, Georgia should have been pissed off too, and they didn't hemorrhage their entire freaking roster out the door before the freaking Orange Bowl. Bobby Bowden would be rolling over in his grave thinking that they gave a crap about the freaking Orange Bowl. That's all he cared about.
And, and I will say this too. I understand that they were missing. I mean, they were missing their whole team. I mean, it was that was the most embarrassing thing.
That's a sign of a bad freaking culture. If you're undefeated and you can't talk 20-something players into hanging around for the Orange Bowl.
And for me, I mean, I'm with you. I think their program in terms of what their culture is. When you looked at the end of the game, they said, he said, I appreciate the guys, and we were treated unfairly. I appreciate guys being here. But if your culture is what it is, you show up and you win that game. You're basically prove yourself. You know what I mean?
That's how I feel about it, man. Look, Georgia showed up and put 63 freaking points on their asses.
Yeah. And people want to talk about. I understand that they had
100 on them.
They had guys out too, but for Norvell to allow 35 guys to leave the roster, and you're going to tell me that they were close as hell. You're going to tell me you're going to leave your brother out there to go out there and face Georgia and not have a full roster. And I understand they didn't have Jordan Travis anyways either, but you're going to tell me as a team that you potentially went into that game, an Orange Bowl, a New Year's Six Bowl, and you went into that game and you said, you know what, hell with it. I'm going to the portal, or I'm getting ready for the draft. That is not a New Year's Six. And I've told people this numerous times, and I have been so defensive of this because it's a fact.
Yep.
The New Year's Six Bowls are not meaningless. I do not want to hear that they're meaningless, that you're playing legitimate matchups. If anything, you're actually trying to improve your draft stock even more against a potential team that you've not faced all year. I understand if you're playing.
Gave a shit about the Alamo Bowl.
Yeah. It's beyond frustrating for me because I look at these bowl games. I'm a guy, I watch all the bowl games. Okay. I understand if Bobby doesn't want to play in the Boca Raton Bowl or whatever. But a New Year's Six Bowl, an Orange Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, the Rose Bowl, you're going to tell me those games don't matter? Give me a break. That's why some of these players, and here's my biggest thing too. You look at some of these players that are dropping out. They're like 3rd, 4th, 5th round draft picks. I mean, so what are you doing?
Yep.
Like what are you gaining by that? If anything, and I've talked to numerous of these draft guys, especially down in Florida. They said if you lead your team early and you're not a day one pick, that's a problem. That's a red flag. That's a very much me guy. That's a me guy. It's not a we guy. It's a me guy.
Well, and I think that's where you have to be careful, like what I was just saying in this comment here. Hank's talking about that's 1-year rental player stuff. This is why you cannot just sustain your program on the portal. It's supposed to be a supplement to your high school recruiting. Guaranteed the best programs are still going to be the ones that recruit best out of high school and develop. You're not going to be able to keep everybody, so you want to make sure that you get the right guys. But I think that you have to be careful in who you get. Some of these guys, if they're just about money, maybe you recruit your own problems. We know this, and that's always been the saying. But if you are going after guys that are proven, like Bear Alexander to USC last year. Look, they had a lot of really good guys on that defense, and they just still sucked on defense, right? They never kind of came together. I think that's a prime example of that. Coach Prime also, look, when you go that heavy in the portal and nothing out of the high school ranks, it's going to be tough to keep these guys around.
That's a problem.
And to keep these guys around because they're clearly mercenary types.
Yeah. And that leads me into, before I talk about Coach Prime and problems, let me give you a solution. This show is sponsored by Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 15102. Guys, again, for the Pittsburgh people that are on the podcast, we're still working about trying to ship out of state. We're still working on that kind of stuff, but a great place run by 2 great pit men. The selection is through the roof, and obviously they sell the fake slide Pilsner, which helps support pay the players at the University of Pittsburgh. Alliance 412 has been so crucial this year, spending well over $1 million on certain players. It's been incredible. But more importantly, it does support the players, and it does support the Pitt Athletics Collective, Alliance 412, which is the preferred collective of the University of Pittsburgh. Again, guys, Colonial Beer located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA 15102. Get the fake slide, have a drink, watch some of the football games, and enjoy yourself, because some of the games will be a blowout, and we do all need a drink sometimes when we watch those blowouts, especially if you're a Dallas Cowboys fan where they're used to getting blown out. But that's okay. We won't go there. But back into the comments section here. If I had a couple here. Sooner Legend podcast. What's happening, JJ? What's up, brother? Again, I appreciate coming on to the show. I appreciate the, just in general, the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast Mafia coming into the comments section here today. Again, if you have not already, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Again, the show is nothing without all of you because of the dedication and what you guys do on a day-to-day basis. It's a privilege to have guys like Jason come on the show because of his knowledge, just in general, what he's able to do, being able to go onto his show because of, one, the respect level, but more importantly, just the brotherhood that we have there. And obviously, Coach, who's on there, who's not here today, we'll get him on the show eventually too. Count him as a brother and the amount of knowledge he has. But again, please subscribe to the channel down below. And Jason, before we move on, tell the fans where they can find you at, especially the Pitt fans that are on here and some of the ACC and Big Ten people.
At CFB-pod right here on YouTube. It's the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast with Jason and Coach. We're on every Tuesday night at 8:30 Eastern Time. And all the way throughout the week we pop up. We're not as you're gonna see us more days than not, but there's no set schedule aside from that Tuesday night show. FSU culture is not great. Cougar Intruder, you're crazy.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to that comment here in a section because we're gonna get to it here. Sorry I'm late. Talk is Pitt. Sorry I'm late. Was watching Green Bay beat down Dallas. We were just talking about that.
I like that show too, man.
Yeah, honestly, just really good to see the tradition of the Dallas Cowboys continue on. Good for them. Let's see here. Wanted to see what that question is at. What is up? Talk is Pitt. Can't buy tradition. Let's see here. Lots of love for JJ in the show again. Appreciate that, brother. But I want to get to this one right here. Cougar Intruder. FSU has a top 10 high school recruiting class. What are you talking about? That's great. I mean, I'm not saying, I don't think we've said anything about not having a great recruiting class. I mean, there's a number of teams out there that have great recruiting classes.
They didn't do this for years before. 13-0 the bad culture. The bad culture part, I'm not saying it's completely bad. What I'm telling you is it's not the same as the national championship type programs like Georgia that they could hold on to players despite not getting into the playoff, but you guys hemorrhage everybody out. 20-something players, and that's your excuse. Don't tell me how great your freaking culture is if you can't hold on to guys for a freaking New Year's Six game that Coach Bowden only cared about, the Orange Bowl. Yeah.
I think that's the only thing that really has me, and again, I understand what you're saying, Cougar Intruder, but you gotta admit, again, I hate to say, I'm just being honest. I'm not a Florida State fan, but I was very defensive on all my videos about Florida State playoffs, everything. But that is a major question.
I agree with you about them getting screwed, but yeah, I think that this is a system that was set up to screw people.
Yeah, and I just think that also too, that it is a valid question to ask. If you're going to prove something, especially when you're 13-0, going for a perfect season, you felt like you got screwed. How do you not show up and play Georgia? And then Georgia takes it to a whole different level. I talked to those coaches down there. I have a friend of mine that's actually on staff. They said they went into practice for 3 straight weeks and just practiced like they were going to the national championship. That's just a different level of culture. Do I think Florida State can get there? I think they can. It'll take time. But I think that where they're at right now, that's a very, very questionable type of culture to where everybody hits the portal and then you leave your brothers out there to face Georgia, Florida State, again, I love what Florida State did early in the year. They beat the brakes off of LSU and Brian Kelly. I mean, I think for most of us here who are not Notre Dame fans or not Brian Kelly fans, especially when being a used car salesman that he is. I think that when you look at that was a great victory early on in the season, beating the brakes off of LSU. But you get to the end of the season, finish strong. You're in the Orange Bowl. You're not in the Boca Raton Bowl. You're not in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. You're not in the Great Bubonic Bowl, as John Gruden would say. You're in the Orange Bowl, man. It's a New Year's Six Bowl. That's a privilege to be in those games, and to see them not go into that game, and not even at 100%, just even at for me 50%, because I mean there were 30 plus guys that missed the game. That's just a questionable thing for me.
Crazy. Yeah, don't tell me how great the culture is. And I just don't agree. And I think that it's unbelievable that you would. What about last year when FSU had 0 opt-outs in the pointless Cheez-It Bowl? Yeah, okay. Yeah, because they thought that they were going to come back around and have a chance at the national championship this year. I'm not disagreeing with you that the CFP has not been put together correctly. I'm not disagreeing with that. What I'm telling you is if this was such a great culture down there, you would not have hemorrhaged the entirety of your freaking roster that you needed before going into the Orange Bowl. I cannot believe that freaking Florida State fans, of all people, would call the Orange Bowl meaningless. Unbelievable. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had a couple, and there's another example a couple of years ago when Alabama didn't make it into the playoff. And Nick Saban held that team together where they all, I think it was Tua. I mean, Tua didn't opt out, played his final game at Alabama. It's just a different level of culture, and what guys truly believe in. Are they playing for the bowl game, the meaningless bowl game? It's a New Year's Six Bowl, which is not meaningless. I mean, there's a lot of guys on that roster that were very questionable about, are they first round picks? They're not everybody on every roster is a first round pick. I think there's a number of different guys on Florida State's roster that will certainly be a first-round pick. But to some of these guys, second, third, fourth round, what are you not playing for?
Yeah. I
mean, that's very questionable. And again, Florida State had a hell of a season, 13-0. They beat some damn good football teams on that roster. Especially the games that came down tight and they found a way to win. Look, I think they had a great year. But you got to finish just the questionable. And
don't complain and then don't show up for the freaking, I get it. You got screwed. But again, Georgia did too. I mean, they had one loss in freaking 30 games. One loss in 30 games. They're the back-to-back defending champions, and they don't get to go defend their title. They didn't throw a little shit fit and go, hold their breath in the corner and then watch everybody walk out the door and they showed up and beat the crap out of you guys. You could have really proven something, even by just staying on the field with Georgia. You would have shown that, yeah, they did belong. Now nobody wants to hear it. It's just been complain. I don't feel bad for Florida State at this point. I don't. It's people like this, and you see it all day, every day on Twitter and on my show. I've had people attacking me for stuff. Look, I don't think that they were one of the best 4 teams. I don't. But I would have been fine with them being in the playoff. I just don't think they were one of the best 4 teams. That being said, I don't know. The whole point is that it's the CFP problem, not as much of everybody else. You want to blame Alabama for it. Why? They went and played and did what they were supposed to do. They won their conference championship game. They lost a game earlier in the year to Texas, another playoff team. Look, it is what it is. I'm surprised it didn't happen more, JJ.
Yeah. And again, talk is Pitt. It's a very good point. I just mentally forgot about this. Last year, Pitt did have 12 plus opt-outs. We talk about, we were at the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl down in El Paso. Pitt took care of business and beat the 17th ranked team in UCLA, and they had 1 opt-out. You know what I mean? Right. So you're playing for your brother at that point. I just think that I understand why you're upset, why the team was upset. Because one, believe it or not, I'm one of those people where, again, I'm not a Florida State guy, but I even came out and said, look, they still had a good defense. They went into Gainesville, beat up on Gainesville with a 3rd-string quarterback. They were getting their 2nd-string quarterback back. I could totally understand why they went in there. I could totally understand that. And then when you look at the 2 teams that eventually went to the national title, Washington was clearly outmanned. They were nowhere near the team how physical Michigan was. I mean, Texas would have gotten the brakes beat off of them too. Texas would have never been able to compete with Michigan. But when you look at it,
they're pretty good in the trenches. That's the one place that Texas. I think that Texas matched up with everybody but Washington. I think where they were deficient in that secondary and not being able to get as much pressure on Penix as what you saw obviously Michigan do was where it was their undoing. But yeah, I think obviously you're right. Michigan they turned into a beat you up football team, and it worked out very well for them.
Also too, this is a great Mark. I think this, to be honest with you, and this is something behind the scenes. Agree, no other school leaving their conference has publicly talked the crap about conference like the FSU fans has. I hate to say it, I think that might have had something to do with it, because when you look at the team overall, 13-0, again, I think that, even no matter what people say, I think they had a right to be in there. But I just think that the way that FSU has gone about things, it's almost like ESPN's like almost pissed off. It's almost like ESPN took it personally, and there's something
the ACC itself, right? The ACC itself. I mean, they're trying to protect their conference, and I mean, I'm not taking sides on that. I tell you that if anything, I feel like ESPN and Fox have taken over college football. I understand why people are pissed off. I get it. You know what I mean? And I think that but here's the deal. All these conferences sold their soul to the television networks.
Yeah.
They love that check.
It sucks.
They love that check.
Younger people don't understand tradition. That's a fact, brother, right there. Yeah. It's a we culture or me. It's a we culture or me culture. Yeah.
Yeah. It's gotten worse and worse over the years. But
Cougar Intruder, I appreciate you subscribing, though, brother. I do appreciate that. Look, yeah, I'm not. We're not going to give you the clickbait stuff. We're just being honest. I mean, it's just, do we feel bad for Florida State? In a way, I still do. Even though how Florida State fans have treated other fan bases, that was the only thing that kind of got me rubbed the wrong way, is how Florida State fans are treating other fan bases. Like, I mean, dude, we were on your side. We were on your side, and you guys just ruined it.
I love those guys. I mean, they're all. I like them. I like the what's that one? It's with Jen and
Sharpshooter Podcast. What's going on, man? Appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect, and I actually like Jay Norvell too, by the way. I just think that I don't think that it's just a situation that it's all bad. You know what I mean? It's all bad on everybody else. I think that man, it sucks that Jordan Travis got hurt. It really sucks that Jordan Travis got hurt. But let's be honest. Was there a chance they were beating anybody in the playoff without Jordan Travis? I have a hard time believing that.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing that I would say. Yeah. Now, look, again, I've told people too, if Jordan Travis is healthy, it's 100% Florida State's in it. It's not even close. They are easily one of the top three teams.
No doubt about it. Absolutely.
And especially with their defense. I mean, I've watched their defense up close. I mean, it was a damn good defense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you look at their outside weapons, and in terms of Wilson, and then they had what's his face? I saw he was a freak when they were up here at Pitt. Oh my God, they had plenty of talent. They'd have been in there, but I just think the injury hurt. But still,
and he was stand up about it too, and feeling as awful as he did about getting hurt. I look. Again, I feel like it sucks overall. I mean, for everybody involved. We're talking about the entirety of everybody. It sucks, man. It's not fun to watch. It's not fun to see that people got screwed out of it. But in the end, it was a flawed system to begin with. It didn't, and the ACC kind of screwed you guys as Florida State by going and doing the Big Ten's bidding by voting against the expanded playoff a year earlier. If it's this year that they're at 12 teams, there's no way they keep them out. No way.
Jason, to your point, I agree with you on numerous aspects, and I've said this again to the people that have been here before. I cover the ACC, the Big Ten, the SEC, Big 12, everything. I will say the only thing that really pisses me off about the ACC is the lack of leadership. I mean, they made a major mistake that they should have allowed us before the previous season. And there's a lot of stuff that still pisses me off about just the leadership in the ACC and what they do. But again, I think we did it in general to where if he's healthy, he's in. He wasn't. He's not.
I agree.
It hurt the overall conversation.
Well, and then I just feel like I don't think that they handled it well as a university after that. And I don't necessarily blame Jay Norvell. I think that the way that but this entirety, you're going to legislators and all this other kind of stuff. And then your lawsuits against the ACC and stuff. Look, when all that got started and you really signaled to the players that this game doesn't matter. And I would say that I think Bobby Bowden would be rolling over in his grave thinking that nobody at Florida State gives a shit about the Orange Bowl.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable to me.
Bobby Bowden, one of the best of all time, who took every game. It didn't matter what
I met
he
him
did.
Once. I couldn't hardly talk, man. There's few guys that I've been around a lot of coaches and players and stuff like that, I met Michael Jordan and it didn't do me the way that some of these coaches that I met was like, Bobby Bowden was great man and great coach, but again, when you have a system that it's 4 playoffs teams, 5 power conferences that make it up, there's no way you're going to be fair all the time.
Yeah.
Again, I'm surprised that was the only time that you really had that much controversy in 10 years.
To be honest with you, yeah. I mean, you look at it overall, you could have went down a road and a path where you were just consistently having problems. And look, there were multiple teams
year after year.
And it's not even normal where, the Big Ten was left out a couple of years. Heck, there was a huge discussion about Penn State winning the Big Ten. They were left out. A couple of years ago, the Big Ten was left out overall. Ohio State gets in one year, gets shut out by Clemson. Questions about that. Then you had a couple of years where the Big 12 was left out. Then you had the Pac-12 left out. It's crazy how more that conversation was not brought up. Is the crazy part.
Did I say Jay Norvell? Of course it's Mike. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, guys. Yeah. In the end. I think that Florida State is in position to do good. I'm a DJU fan, big time. I think that they did a good job getting him. That's going to piss Clemson right off. Ooh,
I know. Can you believe he's going to Florida State, back to the ACC? That was a hell of a grab.
Get Big Dave back on the show, man. He's been on the show before. I can't wait to see him on the show again so we can talk to him about this. But yeah, man, I think that was a big time pickup right there. He was another dude this year at Oregon State, and I think that Oregon State had a heck of a coach and they run a heck of a system. But I think obviously there's going to be more talent there at Florida State. I don't know what they're looking like with some of the receivers and stuff, but I feel like you got some opportunities to make some big moves, especially when Clemson won't, And so I think that if anything's going to stamp home to Clemson that, hey, get in the freaking game.
Yeah,
it's better. It'll be that, because DJU will come back with another team and kick your ass.
Yeah. Trust me, I'm excited to see what he does. But guys, we are at the hour and 30-minute mark here. And I can tell you this, it was a hell of a show. We usually go for an hour, but when we get Jason on here, for me, I got to go longer than an hour because the guy knows what the hell he's talking about. Before we jump off, how's it looking for your Pitt Panthers? We'll get to that one next time. I'll tell you what, I am happy about where Pitt's going because of the great portal additions. We added Eli Holstein, the quarterback from Alabama, who should be really good. But we'll hit that next time. Jason, before we hop off and before I thank the fans for subscribing and liking the video today, please tell them where they can find you on all social media.
Hey, first off, man, I just want to thank you for having me on. Love talking ball with my boy, JJ Kitchen. It's always a better show whenever he's on our show. He's always on our show, too. So if you aren't a subscriber to the program, make sure you jump over to @CFB-pod. That's Hall of Fame College Football with Jason and the Coach. You can obviously find me on Twitter, X, whatever, right there, @JW_HOF as well. Hey, man, we just talk college football. We have a lean towards Oklahoma, but we're doing some things this year that are going to be expanding our reach, with some other creators. We really love working with JJ. So thanks a lot, JJ, for having me on, man. It's always fun getting on and talking ball with you.
Brother, it's a privilege. And let me tell you, to the fans here and the people that tune in, the show is nothing without you. And it truly is. We have some of the greatest people.
Absolutely.
You know, Jason, again, the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast with Coach. You guys are the best. Anytime I'm on the show, it's a great conversation. You guys bring great questions. You did again today. From all the Pitt fans and the ACC fans that were colliding tonight in the comment section, but more importantly, who come all the time to this channel. Beyond thankful for what you do. I bring people like Jason on. It's a small group because, one, I respect these guys. It's never clickbait stuff. It's the truth. That's why the show is what it is. That's why I join Jason's group all the time. Again, the show is nothing but without you guys. And again, thank you guys for subscribing. If you haven't, please below subscribe to the channel. We're almost to 1,000. We're getting there. Jason's done a great job of helping promote it as well. Please like the video, share it with your friends. We got more ACC, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12 officially coming to a close. This is the last season. More talk coming up here. But again, make sure if you have not subscribed to Jason's channel yet, subscribe to his channel. Guys, as always and forever, it is a great and a privilege to bring you guys college sports, a conversation, but more importantly, the weekly Sunday conversation that we like to have here because, one, I like to interact with you because I love your ideas, your comments, but more importantly, the characteristics and the conversations that we do have. Until next time, again, this has been an episode of the Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen show. Guys, again, always and forever, hail to Pitt. I'll see you guys next time.